November marked the beginning of the 2022 FIFA World Cup that is hosted by Qatar. The World Cup is arguably one of the most watched sporting events internationally. It draws in viewers irrespective of their knowledge of soccer. Personally, I despise the World Cup. I would like to emphasize that I do not hate the fans who watch the event because I understand that it's their choice to do so, and for many of them, simply a form of escapism. Many sensible and level-headed observers merely watch it because it is a large spectacle just like the Super Bowl. Nevertheless, there are several issues surrounding the World Cup that make me dislike it, which I will discuss today. Firstly, I feel like the World Cup is an event that sows division by imbuing fans with a zealous sense of nationalism. During this year's tournament, two fans of Team France were surrounded by a group of Australian supporters in Melbourne. The Australian fans lashed out at them after France took the lead in their game against Australia. They accosted the French fans and tried punching them, and many resorted to verbal insults. The funniest thing about the incident was a revelation that the two fans who donned French jerseys are also Australian. The two fans in question posted a video about it to YouTube. They knew that by wearing the colors of the opposing team, they would draw the ire of the Australian crowd. The reaction by the Australian crowd was tribalism in its most basic form. Because these two individuals wore a jersey with different colors than the home team, fans saw fit to attack them. This type of attitude is widely held by the fans who attend these tournaments. In the last few iterations of the World Cup, countries have been fined as a result of fans that have used hateful chants to demonize their opponents. One instance that comes to mind occurred in a match between Germany and Mexico in the 2018 World Cup. Throughout the match, Mexican fans chanted homophobic slurs whenever Germany's goalkeeper Manuel Neuer touched the ball. During this year's tournament, Croatian fans taunted Canadian goalkeeper Milan Borjan with chants pertaining to his ethnic background. These type of events occur at every single World Cup. Instead of being an event that brings people together, it tends to divide people based on ethnic backgrounds. One of the top sports broadcasters in Canada, Sportsnet, used to run the slogan "United by Sport." Personally, I fail to see how sports unite people. Another issue with the World Cup is the corruption of FIFA and its unscrupulous behavior. FIFA has no problems with awarding the World Cup to countries that violate basic human rights and use modern-day slave labor. This year's World Cup was particularly controversial because Qatar has a poor track record in regards to the treatment of women, migrant workers, and the LGBT community. Qatar used modern slave labor in order to complete the construction of the stadiums that were used in the tournament. The previous World Cup, which took place in Russia in 2018, was also controversial because Russia had various human rights abuses to its name. By 2018, Russia had already annexed Crimea in the Ukraine, and it was still headed by a dictator, Vladimir Putin, who violated the rights of the LGBT community and quashed political dissent and opposition by torture and unlawful detainment of political opponents. The current FIFA president even mentioned that he was prepared to host a World Cup in North Korea if the World Cup would be able to unite the world. This illustrates that FIFA has no qualms working with dictatorships that violate the most basic of human rights. The leadership of North Korea has overseen a humanitarian crisis in which many of the country's citizens pass away due to food shortages. These food shortages have wrought havoc on the country for decades, and the corrupt leadership of the country does nothing to alleviate these problems, instead focusing on the development of nuclear weapons and threatening its enemies in East Asia. The hosting of the World Cup usually has a detrimental effect on the host nation. The issue is that FIFA decrees that the host nation must have state-of-the-art stadiums in order to host the event. As a result, even if a particular country already has enough stadiums to host the event, it will inevitably spend millions in upkeep and maintenance costs in order to placate FIFA. The worst part is that many of the past host nations have had to build new stadiums from scratch, which adds to the cost of hosting the event. Often, when a tournament ends, many of these stadiums remain unused and have to be torn down. As a result, these countries end up squandering millions in order to use some stadiums for a couple of weeks. Perhaps one could argue that the benefit of hosting the event is that it offers a temporary boost to your economy and your tourism industry, but in the long run, the benefits are negligible. In sum, I think the World Cup is a lackluster event that has somehow managed to be one of the most watched sporting events. I think that hosting it is not worth the trouble. If you enjoy the World Cup, more power to you. If FIFA wasn't such a corrupt organization, some of the issues that haunt the World Cup could be avoided and rectified. Unfortunately, it does not seem that FIFA is willing to reflect on its actions, and as a result, it is unlikely that there will be change on the horizon.